Welcome to today's edition of Take a Leap and Transform, a Neurodiversity Journey podcast, where entrepreneurs, employees, business owners, and individuals can become aware and transform their mindset. Welcome back to Take a Leap and Transform, a Neurodiversity Journey. I'm your host, Joseph K Muscat. Are you ready to take a leap with me? Today, I would say we have a special guest who is a master communication and motivation speaker. What I truly enjoy is his use of speech and how he's able to engage and converse with people through conversation. Allow me to introduce you to Richard Blank. Richard's journey in the call center space is filled with twists and turns. When he was 27 years old, he relocated to Costa Rica to train employees for one of the largest call centers in San Jose. With a mix of motivation, public speaking style, backed by tactful, appropriate rhetoric, Richard shares his knowledge and trained over 10,000 bilingual telemarketers. Richard Blank has the largest collection of restored American pinball machines and antique Rockaola jukeboxes in Central America, making gamification a strong part of Triple C's cultural. Richard Blank is the Chief Executive Officer for Costa Rica's call center since 2008. Welcome, Richard.
Joseph, so happy to be here with you and your audience today. I can't wait to shed some light on my industry, share some secrets, and have the best time.
Fantastic. Well, let's start off, Richard. There are a number of things I want to cover with you. And the first item I want to start with is taking the concept of taking a chance. What does that mean for you, and why is it an important step?
I think the most important thing, my good friend, is being able to look into your own eyes in the mirror and respecting oneself. I think that chances should be done where odds are in your favor. I was building on momentum with a second language. I had a chance to come to Costa Rica, work at my friend's center so I could test the waters. And after learning the industry from the inside and out, I felt the odds were in my favor with the experience, maturity, impulse control, and capital that I threw my hat in the ring. And the next thing you know, my bet paid off, and we just celebrated our 15th year in business. So I guess collective and really thought out chance taking will be good for you because, you know, fortune favors the brave. If you never put your chips on the table, you never win. And so I suggest to people to drink life and try for things from time to time.
Fantastic. And definitely, embracing that fear and taking that leap is so essential to one's development. And many people are absolutely afraid to take that chance.
It's how they were raised. Maybe their opinions were provided for them, or they're under an enormous amount of pressure to follow certain career paths. I myself was a little selfish, maybe a dreamer. I didn't go to Harvard Law. I didn't go to Ivy League, and I'm not into finance or economics or in my family's real estate business. I studied second language and decided to move abroad. So it was my own vision quest, my own story. So in order for you to live your life, you may need to be selfish from time to time. The worst thing is to live in a box without walls and to fulfill someone else's life that they want for you. So that's really a big decision that some people have to make from time to time. My decision was made on positive reinforcement, my passion towards a language, my good intentions, my good faith. I wasn't hurting anybody. All I saw were doors being opened and people being impressed for my dedicated practice, my structure, and my discipline. So if you can keep getting this positive momentum and physics is in your favor, why would you stop that? So these are the sort of things from time to time you might need a checkpoint, Joseph, just to make sure that you're making progress on your journey.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of points there that you tick the box on that I can relate, because we've been living in Malta for the last 8 years, but prior to that, we spent a lot of 5 years debating on whether or not to make that decision. And, on our part, you mentioned being a dreamer. We were dreamers. We were, deciding to take that chance and being selfish. And let's live a part of our life somewhere else. So I can completely relate to everything that you say in there. With your staff and in your life, you've pushed for an increase in self-reliance and confidence. And you do this by asking for a coming-of-age story. Can you explain that approach?
Absolutely. When people are hiring individuals, they'll fill out a form and give you their resume, and they'll They'll put their best things on there. It's almost like a Facebook account. They'll show you the 1% happy and hide the 99. So I asked them to turn their paper over besides their qualifications and their aspiration. I'd like for you to write me 3 paragraphs on a coming of age moment. Then I explain what it is: beating up a bully, saving a kitten, or doing both in one day. I can gauge their grammar vocabulary, but I also want to see their depth. Do they really have substance? Are they people that I can rely upon? Can I give them a nickname so they can get through a rainy Wednesday when a client hangs up on them? And so these are the sort of things that I try to uncover for long-term stability, not for people that are just looking to bounce in and out and to dip their toe into the waters of Costa Rica's call center. So this industry is interesting. There's a large attrition. It's transitional. Some people even look down upon it. Hollywood glamorizes it. But if you're talented on the phone, you can earn more than most vocations. There are people at my center that earn more than doctors and attorneys. So they're not going anywhere. And since we're in a very strict Catholic country, Joseph, it's imperative for me that the agents do not compromise their ethics, values, and morals, and can go home and tell their mother what they do for a living. So unlike Hollywood, my good friend, at Costa Rica's call center, we do not do sports books, casinos, stocks, pharmacies, or sweepstakes. We're highly selective of the campaigns that come in. So to answer your question in regards to fear and wanting to commit to a project, well, it's really about the agent being comfortable making those phone calls and realizing that you're working with a company that's on the up and up and that there's no gray area and it's not shady. And if you can produce something like that, then by all means, people will be waiting outside to work on your campaign.
Really interesting, because I mean, the coming of age story approach, it allows you to discover who they are as a person and what their values are and what they're committed to in regards to taking action and bringing change towards their life, or how they will be presenting themselves as an employee in your business.
Yes, Joseph, but they're so well rehearsed. And I don't like that. What happens if you and I are on a phone call and all of a sudden something spontaneous comes up? You need to think in the moment. Are these people able to relate to athletics, to art, to animals, to culture? I don't know. Stop reading your script for a second and talk about Joseph's dog or the fact that Malta's a beautiful place to live, and ask probing questions so you can anchor with people and loosen your tie a bit and be real. These are the sort of soft skills that I was raised upon, where you ask permission before taking a beverage and wipe your feet before going in someone's home. I think people need to be more of a painting instead of a print. Stop reproducing yourself. Every single phone call should be unique, just like Costa Rica and Malta, for an example. And so if they can take this call by call, it's really not a strain, it's not a grind. They can really see the art of speech, especially English second language, which shows such dedication. And don't kid yourself. You might have a slight accent, but I see that as a Marilyn Monroe beauty mark. As long as you have proper grammar and vocabulary, by all means, people see that as exotic and you're going to get more of their attention.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a really great way to lead into the next question, actually, which is, I want to dive into your approach of effective communication. And let's start off with, what steps or exercises one needs to take?
If we're talking about coaching, we need the permission. Fear is a morbid anticipation. So I let them know that any sort of campaign that I will place them on is 10 times harder than learning a second language. So we put that in perspective. Secondly, as you can see behind me, I'm a collector of vintage machines. This is a 1961 Ricola Regis in my private candy stash. Downstairs, I have the largest collection of American pinball and retro arcade machines. So prior to a first training class, Joseph, we start with recess. At my dinner, we start with dessert first. Why? So it reduces stress. People can start bonding instead of just absorbing. Now in class, they're contributing. People are laughing and having fun. They're playing games that are older than they are and they've never tried before. But it gives them a medium. This is a neutral environment to recharge batteries, to not go outside, have a cigarette, isolate yourself on your phone. The best way to reduce attrition is to make best friends and to have some fun and have people to go to lunch with. And so when I'm scaling and onboarding people, all I'm doing is adding to their momentum. I'm not taking any credit. What I like to do is remove any sort of bad habits that they may have. If they've never worked at a center before, that's even better. They could be a squire to a knight. Since English is their second language, my good friend, I'm always expanding on their vocabulary. So we focus on the thesaurus. I can give them similes so they can sound more diplomatic and strategic. They don't sound so rigid and hedge on the phone. And so by having these checkpoints, investing in something that they can practice outside of the office, which I can see this growth, it's something that's only going to make them more money and more marketable, and maybe even avoid any sort of miscommunications. And so just by adjusting the word help to guide, assist, and lend a hand, we've been able to prolong conversations, avoid rabbit holes, and make better friends. We like the military alphabet. That assists us so emails don't bounce back. But Joseph, my friend, I'm going to give you the $1 million bit of advice for people onboarding. When you're prospecting a company and you're being transferred to the decision maker, you give a positive escalation. You let the gatekeeper or the filter know how amazing they were. You're going to say it verbally. You'll do it in writing. But you're going to separate yourself from 99 of the other people prospecting that company prior to any sort of contracts. All the things I'm doing, it's purely good faith. I'm making nice. I'm letting them remember me. And I'm paying it forward. I'm giving the gift. I got the pass to pitch, so I might as well give the gift of this individual that allowed me to speak with you. Joseph, we do attentive listening, take copious notes, do meeting minutes. These are the things that I was raised upon. And don't be surprised if you're not building a very large pipeline, you're not converting leads, and you're not getting a ton of referrals from people. Old school business is the way to go. And as long as you can do it that way, hey, technology will assist you. But what happens if the lights go out? Can I still sit and talk to Joseph for an hour and be his best friend? And so those are the sort of soft skills that we rely upon.
In regards to soft skills, you've mentioned quite often now about speech and vocabulary.
Yes.
So, and you mentioned about a thesaurus and a simile. With your employees then, especially with it being their second language, what are you looking for and what training techniques are you giving them to build upon that speech and vocabulary?
That's why you have the best podcast. Great question, my good man. Let's give it two ways. First, we have a quality control department. I have the luxury of infrastructure. Every single call is recorded. I have a department that will grade you on your KPIs, which are key performance indicators, your simple metrics. Did I spell Joseph's name right? Did I get his email address? Did I ask him the 10 questions? Did I confirm it? Did I chat with you a little bit? Yeah, fine. That's what I'm paying you to do. Okay, so you get 100% on that. But I give it on these soft skills. If you hear a dog barking in the background, you better anchor and ask them the dog's name, the breed, and how old's your puppy, right? And if there's certain things that people are interested in, why don't you take it from horizontal to vertical and ask open-ended questions? Not, does Joseph like ice cream? Joseph, what type of ice cream do you like? I'll still get, you love ice cream. It's chocolate, triple scoop, and some Jimmy's on top. There's a chance that the client will give you stacked answers and add momentum for you, prioritize for you, buy you time, save you time. It's being in the now, it's being in the moment. And so I believe that English second language agents, they have such intense concentration through the translation, they have no choice but to be in the now. And I think a lot of the times just by repeating something in a transitional sentence, moving to the next one for checkpoints and putting things to bed is an excellent way to move conversations forward. And so we do these things at a beautiful pace. Now, when they listen to these calls, they hear themselves. They know when their timing is off. They could have been louder. Did they interrupt? If they need to repeat themselves, that's on our end. And how about this, my good man? We do fall on swords. Sure, your connection's terrible, your internet, your dog is barking like crazy, your kid's screaming in the background. That's on you. But we say, for an example, hey, Joseph, for my clarification, was it ABC or 1, 2, 3? Brother, your dog's barking in the background. You then inadvertently and passive aggressively know, I can't hear you. So then you put the dog outside, you come back, and then we reset again. That's what you do. And if you're capable of doing that, time flies, you make a ton of money, and you actually find this job very fulfilling because it's still the art of speech. My good man, most companies today prefer omni-channel non-voice support. They want chat, they want emails, they just want to take advantage of their clients. Well, in my opinion, if you have interpersonal communication, regardless of conflict management, we keep talking about that, just by speaking with somebody, you can retain the client, you can get an upsell, you might get a referral. But how about this, Joseph? This is the real mature business thinking. You also get an exit interview. If you have a loyal client for 10 years and they leave you, hopefully they will tell you what you did and what the competition had done to earn their business. And if you can put your ego aside and potentially readjust your company culture to the suggestions of people that have been with you, then by all means, that's how you can grow. And so these are the sort of simple suggestions for entrepreneurs, for business owners, or just anybody that's curious on what it's like to run a company. It's just very calm and cool and methodical. And that's pretty much that.
Now, you mentioned interpersonal communications and conflict management. So at some point through your training and communication, and even through trial and error, your employees go through this in their communication. So
Yeah.
how do you train them, and what strategies do you have in place to develop those your interpersonal communications and that conflict management strategy?
Well, it's very simple. If no one has to wait on cue, they're not angry. If someone can get their food fast, they're satisfied. It's just all about workforce management. The majority of the frustration people have is when they got to be on hold or someone didn't update their notes and then they got to repeat themselves 7 times when they get transferred. So really conflict management is on our end. As long as we come to the table prepared with your account and at the ready, saving time and letting them know that we are prepared. Really, the only thing is just reducing their frustration for things that are outside of your control that they might have happened. But I've seen, for the most part, the worst thing you could say to somebody is, I'm sorry. What you can say is, Joseph, thank you very much for bringing this to my attention. I understand your position. Now allow me a moment to work on it and fix it for you. I didn't say you're right or wrong. I'm not saying I'm giving you credit yet, but I'm addressing it, understanding it, and buying some time to fix it. And people are willing to work with us if we're accountable and we respond before the end of a business day. If we, as I mentioned before, meeting minutes, we take notes. There's certain things you can't avoid, but also chaos, you see character. And if you try to push things down the lane or you deflect, you're going to get caught and you'll lose the client. And some of the best clients I've had is when I've had to make those phone calls where literally I had to be forthright and let them know that either there was an attrition rate or something happened to a computer or the list isn't good. And if you can get through those sort of tough times, imagine the good times. And so with the agents, we allow them to give us the feedback. We talk about the script. We listen to the calls. We look at the list. I don't want them walking up hills with rocks in their backpack. That's not fair. That's not what we're looking to do. It lowers morale. People could quit. And so there's really needs to be that super healthy balance between the client, the agent, and the work. And that, my friend, can pretty much reduce any sort of conflict management. It's really about our own preparation.
There's a lot of great points that you've pointed out there. And in that development, you're training a lot of people how to speak on the phone.
Yes.
And when we take a look at communication strategies, obviously these can be applied outside of the phone, in person. And I bring this up in particular, because it depends on many neurodivergents. They can have very good communication skills. They can have very poor communication skills. And my question is, based on what you've described so far, how can this be employed in, let's say, especially in your call center, for example, when it's communicating, amongst colleagues? And you also mentioned, as well as, you have a script, so there's a bit of an agenda there to help prep people. What can you share for one to be able to prepare, especially when we take a look at one's processing speed and be able to communicate in a one-to-one situation or in a meeting or especially in your specialty with phone calls?
We'll break it down both for you. My specialty is non-visual, but I'll talk about visual. If somebody is they talk about mirror imaging techniques where you're matching body language on how you sit, crossing arms and things like that. That's fine. But my best bit of advice is 2 things. If someone is an energy sucker, like a Medusa, but you can't be disrespectful and not look at them, my suggestion is look in between their eyes. It looks like you're looking in their eyes. Tilt your head, nod with them, and breathe properly. Someone's giving love, then look in their eyes and let it suck in. That's number one. I mean, that's face to face. But it's over the phone. You don't have the luxury of sight. I can't see you nodding. I can't see you leaning forward. I can't see you clicking a pen or writing notes. So I have to be a little more astute. The scientists claim that if you reduce any sort of stimuli or senses, the other ones expand. So if you think about it, on the phone, I'm in a very controlled environment. You've reduced my taste, touch, and smell. Now, my hearing should be expanded. They say you should listen twice as much than you speak. But I also believe in image streaming, metaphysics. You know perfectly well that if you read a book, your imagination is better than the movie. So just by descriptions, you can take advantage of this metaphysics while three other senses are removed. Now, I think that just adds a little more color to the call. And I think you get their attention because it's very difficult with attention spans of 30 seconds. Face to face, I could smack you, throw water on you, stand up and scream. On the phone, I got to make sure that I say your name to bring you back, use a personal pronoun like your or are to bring you back, trigger words, spiking these words to get your attention. These are certain things that you really need to be paying attention to. And finally, my good man, if you have the luxury of time, okay, it could save a marriage, a Thanksgiving dinner, or a business relationship. If you're capable of taking notes and writing a draft and not sending it, thinking about it and sleeping on it till the next day, going to the gym, working out on it, washing your car on it, for me, playing pinball on it. Maybe the following day, Joseph, I will call you and apologize for overextending myself. Maybe my tone was off, realizing how valuable our relationship is and where your priorities are. And so when people can give themselves a time out to regroup, I've seen probably 90% of the time adjustment of tones and people not asking for forgiveness, but just wanting to make sure that everything's cool. And I like things like that. There's no rush when a relationship is very important for you. And sometimes you can even set boundaries and let people know that we should possibly talk about this today and take a break before things could potentially get out of hand.
Very, very sound advice. And you actually got into the conversation that I wanted to talk with you, which you already touched upon, which is micro expressions and using visualization to imagine what the other person is doing on the other end, to be able to read body language through speech.
We have a technique. It's called can you read that? The phonetic micro expression reading?
Yes, but you have it upside down.
Do I now? Nice. I did that on purpose, by the way.
I'm sure you did. Yes, I see that.
All right, my main man. It's a very simple XY chart. Let's just think about rate of speech, positive, negative, and pitch, which is speaking level. You have an XY chart, 4 quadrants. For argument's sake, put me as an 8 in speed and an 8 in sound, in volume. So I'd be a quadrant 1, 88. Mesh. So every 30 seconds, I see if somebody spikes or dips. Phonetics is broken down 4 ways: your tone, rate, pitch, and duration. Tone, I think, should be your consistent variable. We don't mirror image on that. It should always be confident and empathetic, okay? We pay attention to speed and sound. Now, I want to know if they spike or dip. You lead that dance. And if you do, that's usually when we ask a tie down or a confirmation question. These are checkpoints. You're talking about clicking pens or seeing somebody. I can't see you. I might be able to hear a pen, a keyboard, chewing gum. I don't know what you're doing, and I don't know you very well. Maybe clicking pen means happy. Clicking pen means I'm about to hang up on this guy. We want to hear the greatest thing though, Joseph. The number one tell sign, and this is the irony of it, is the answering speed. I'm judging you on phonetics, but I'm really judging you on the silence of the phonetics, because your tone rate and your pitch could be manipulated, like people do when they're being interrogated by the police. That's when they ask the 4th or 5th tough question, and then Mr. Bad Guy all of a sudden starts crying and begging for a plea deal. And so for me, I like to gauge reaction time, because someone's silence, the insecure person could think they're not interested. You and I, Joseph, after making our case and educating them, knowing that that silence means that they're pondering, and we're only getting closer to the goal. If you're willing to have that leap of faith, since you can't see Joseph nodding or saying, continue, Richard, continue, you should know your pace is good. You should know when they're doing a positive or a negative reinforcement. As I say, add more color in your speech to get their attention for 30 seconds. And you might uncover that gem of the barking dog or a company culture. Or if you just do some due diligence prior to a phone call, you could see something on a LinkedIn profile or on a website. Me, for an example, Joseph, if you called me up and you told me that I have pinball machines and Ricolas, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. It's pretty much yours to lose. And so these are the sort of things, my friend, that definitely buy time when people are on the phone call.
Absolutely. I'm curious because there's a lot of scientific approach to what you've described, and definitely a lot of pattern recognition. And you've mentioned triggers and you've mentioned checkpoints in the conversation.
Yes.
How can one, whether in visual or listening in conversation, become more self-aware of those triggers and self points and be able to practice this development, this skill?
Let's use a simple example. You got like the nicest beard, Joseph, and without a mirror, it'd be off a little bit, and you know it. And so, as I say, the best way to improve is dedicated practice. Fortunately, we have the luxury of technology and equipment to listen to oneself. Now, me personally, besides the self-improvement, I needed mentors. I chose certain speakers that I gravitated towards. I'll mention a few. I love Basil Rathbone during the 40s and 50s as Sherlock Holmes with Nigel Bruce. He was phenomenal with old-time radio. Besides being a cool cat on screen, listen to him when you can't see him. He's even that much more powerful. You had another actor for Sherlock Holmes in the 80s called Jeremy Brett. Thought he had a phenomenal performance. But then some of my favorite actors of speech was Pierce Brosnan as Remington Steele and Dirk Benedict as Templeton Peck in the A-Team. So besides Mr. T throwing people through windows and being the man, I also gravitated towards the face man that was able to get things done and be smooth. And so there's nothing wrong with captivating rhetoric. There's nothing wrong with someone that can give you a whirlwind dance of words that excite you and that make conversations more interesting, more engaging, and only encourages people to participate. Because the more things you put out there, finally, they're going to choose one and say, I like that topic. Just don't think everybody likes one sort of ice cream flavor. And so what I like to do is give people a choice, like a dessert tray. And if they choose something, that's what I hold on to first. And I hold on to it for dear life. It's a great ride. And from there, you might be able to grab another arm and pull yourself up. And the next thing you know, you got an appointment with somebody.
Now, you mentioned there in that development, we've talked about rhetoric and how rhetoric can be used in the language communication.
Sure.
Can you explain that?
Absolutely. It's the art of persuasion. The Greeks would sit around and just discuss which argument was stronger than another. And think about Eminem in the movie 8 Mile. He did so well, he did a mic drop at the end. The guy couldn't even come back in his rap battle. And so I always believe clever word choice, semantics is so strong. It avoids rabbit holes. It adds momentum. I mentioned changing words like help and using guide, assist, and lend a hand. These are things that are just colorful for speech. And so for English second language, it's stimulating for them. They're getting a return on investment. It's something that they're just not complacent and stopped learning 5 years ago. We're constantly building upon vocabulary, and it's exciting vocabulary. And we also work on other areas as well. Besides their linguistic skills, they need to work on their phonetic skills. So I have them watching things with English, but with English subtitles. Why? In case there's gunfire, explosions, music in the background, dogs barking in cars, they might not have caught the word in the movie, but if they see it underneath, like I did with Spanish, like the siren in the background, if I'm somewhere and I'm getting 90%, there's a very good chance that I've practiced that muscle memory that I kind of get it now because I'm used to noise in the background. So we go the additional 10%. Joseph, I look for the wiggle room. So there's no surprises. So just in case, like Inspector Gadget, they have that one thing they can pull out of their pocket to save the day. And they're overly prepared because fear gets eliminated. And you walk in with some swagger where your chest is out and your shoulders are back and your chin is up, because it's almost like you, Joseph. You could ask me 1,001 call center questions. I'm going to knock each one out of the park and add a little sauce to it. And so if somebody can walk into that final exam more than ready, it's one of the greatest days they'll ever have in their entire life.
That's absolutely fantastic. I love your passion and your use of language, and you've mentioned colorful language. Well, you're using colorful language to this whole entire interview. It's very, you have a fantastic tone of speech, and it's really great.
I'm trying to match my tie, you know.
and you're really sharing a lot of fantastic sound advice.
Thanks, man.
And now I want to switch the conversation. Hey, listeners, I want to tell you about this wonderful app that I've been using called FocusBear. FocusBear is a productivity and health and well-being app designed by and for neurodiversity professionals like you. The app works on PC, Mac, and mobile devices. I personally found FocusBear so effective because they are designed by engineers who have a lived experience in being neurodivergent. So what does FocusBear do? Well, it removes all distractions and assists you in developing new habits. How? The app is completely customizable. You can set up multiple profiles to block various apps and sites with task-oriented focus. For example, you'll be able to block all sites and apps but the word processing app, and you do so for 2 hours so you can focus on completing that task. What about the habit-forming assistance? Well, you set your days in 3 areas: morning, micro breaks, and afternoon. In each area, you want to form some new habits, and you get to set the days and time durations for each habit. For example, in the morning, you want to meditate for 5 minutes, read for 10 minutes, and work out for 15 minutes. FocusBear will block either all apps and websites and or allow select the apps you choose for each of those time durations. To further help motivate you in each of those sections, you can embed an inspiring video like a 15-minute workout video that you can work out with. With my time using FocusBear, I've been able to set block times of focus to complete tasks, and at the same time, I've been able to reestablish focus center habits and create new ones. The best part is I get to build those habits by being able to extend or shorten the timers. I encourage you to try FocusBear to assist in getting focus and to build the habits you've always wanted. And I want to go into, as a business owner, as a CEO, someone who's managed and trained 10,000 employees, I want to move in towards talking about inclusion. Because as you know, this podcast is about neurodiversity and creating inclusion for neurodiverse talent in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So how can businesses become more inclusive to neurodivergent talent?
From my own personal experience, I was a guest in this country. And secondly, instead of assuming I knew everybody, I delegated and hired experts in law, in accounting, IT, and human resources. The best thing you could do is be humble and ask people for clarification and to learn. That's number one. So the people will respect you. They just don't fear you. And secondly, I look to promote, listen, I can have a guy coming in here that's got all the experience in the world, but if he shows up late and has a cancer, I can't promote you. But I got the freshman with, his wet behind his ears, but he shows up on time every day, pen at the ready, and is literally the nicest kid you could ever meet in your life. I'm going to promote that person. And it doesn't matter your age or your sex or whatever you're doing. I look for merit, period. Because it's not just my promotion. They need the respect of the proletariat. They need to have that synergy so that people just don't know they did it through backstabbing or conniving or angling. They earned it the old-fashioned way. They showed up to work. Their numbers were the best. They had a great attitude. They contributed. By all means, they should be growing with a company. And so inclusion, you take it on a case-by-case basis. And there's sometimes, Joseph, things are happening outside the office which could affect them here. So I give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes they're out of character. Or maybe Joseph, even though you're my buddy, I'm going to say, listen, man, last week you were doing 15 on the phone. Today you're doing 3. You know you're better than that. The real friend will tell you if you have mustard on your face or if your tire's crooked. And me being a real boss, I'm not looking to fire you. I'm looking to get the best out of you. And if I know that you're off that day, maybe instead of threatening you, scaring you, maybe we put some water on your face, go downstairs, play some pinball for a minute, regroup. That's what boxers do. You're only human. You're not a machine. And so you want to talk about inclusion? Well, why don't I give you your dignity? You want to talk about someone feeling like they belong? Well, why don't you really have those sincere, true friendships with people compared to people you just sit and eat lunch with and leave? The greatest thing I've seen is people going out together after work. And in the course of 15 years, I probably have about a half a dozen agents hook up and get married. In fact, just last year, not only did a couple get married, but this one woman was pregnant during the entire time in Costa Rica's Costa. And I was like, wait a second, you met your husband here and the baby was growing here before you gave birth. It's a real CCC baby. And so those things happen. My soil is good. We can grow flowers here. And each one's individual. And I need to look how each person is willing to grow and what sort of things it takes with them. Is it visual? Is it audio? Do they want to face to face? Would they prefer chat? Do they like the game or do that? I don't know. But this is what I am going to find out. What is your code? Joseph, what is your secret sauce? Or how about this, my good man? What did your teacher, coach, parent, or best friend not do that I can do to offset that final development that you need in order for you to get to that next level? So hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, it did. It's really interesting because it's, you take a look at business and management, you either have a dominant employer or manager, and what you're seeing now is the shift of moving away from that, where the expectations where the leader is supposed to be more down to earth and engaging and participating in the development of a company or their employees. And I get the sense from what you've described that is where you are at, and that's what you've been practicing for quite some time.
I'm the rudder of the ship. I mean, it can move a ship, right? It can move a tanker. I'm your rudder. I expect you to do the rest, right? And keep it ship shape.
Now, what about, I mean, I have a feeling how you're going to answer this, but when we take a look at neurodivergence, statistically, over 90% of neurodivergents would never disclose in the workplace because they don't feel it's a safe workplace. And for many reasons, because of past employee experience, due to fear and shame, and really a threat to their career damage. So what, from your experience and what you've done in your organization, what can you share with business leaders and managers to help them create more safe workplaces and to support neurodivergent talent?
The best comedians, Joseph, can tease themselves. So instead of talking about all of my acclimates, why don't I tell the agents the times where I got hung up upon? Or I didn't want to come to work on a rainy Wednesday. So as long as I can relate to them at a certain level, because I'm just a man. I might be 50 years old and you're a boss, but I'm a Philly boy. I followed my dreams and moved here. I mean, how do you want to spin it? But I also believe in first downs before touchdowns. Why don't we first say good morning to somebody so they know that I know who they are? Maybe they're comfortable enough to say good morning to me or even tap me on the shoulder when I'm playing pinball in the morning. Guess what? We already connected like a feral cat that keeps coming back to your house. Maybe instead of saying, hey, Joseph, great job yesterday. Joseph, you made 400 phone calls yesterday. You spoke to 95 people. You pitched 40 of them. You converted 15. You are my man. And I heard that call with Mrs. Jones when the dog was barking. That was great. What does that do to Joseph? It lets you know that I really, really, really listened to you. I just didn't call you champ and ace. Boss really listened to you. So then you get used to that. Then the next thing you know, you start making friends with people around you because of synergy. Okay. And little by little, they're going to realize Richard doesn't bite. He doesn't even bark. Don't take advantage of me. But then again, let's see if we can have a normal conversation so you can be the best. And then possibly through a filter, like a supervisor or a best friend or somebody that has that established relationship with me. They come along, little participation, they see the circle, and little next thing you know, knock on my door, come on in, open door policy. And so pet the bird, open the cage. Does it come back? But if you're just grabbing it and expecting it to be trained, they're going to fly away. And so these are very delicate things because something happened at their last job to have them quit and leave and come to my job. So it's really about just letting the dust settle, letting everybody calm down and letting them know I am that 1%.
Mm.
I
It's
am
really
that
interesting.
boss that will know you.
That's fantastic. And you answered how I expected to answer from the feeling I've gotten from the
Thanks,
prep
man.
talk and the conversation. But it's refreshing because it's about, it's about engaging with the employees. It's about recognizing and giving them value. And it's also about, through that conversation, through that engagement, they know that it's a safe place that they can approach and have that conversation.
100%.
Um, and,
100%.
and that's what leaders need to do in businesses to create that environment. And you've shared some very sound advice. Now,
But we're not supposed to. Aren't we supposed to be big bad bosses smoking cigars, counting our money bags and screaming at people and threatening them like Blake and Glenn Ross and saying Joseph coffee is for closers? That's what we're supposed to do. But that's not what I do.
right.
And the only thing that I do know is how to treat people old school. It's the way I was raised. And A, you're not going to get it out of me. I'm not going to change. And B, you might be able to out tech me. You might have a larger call center than me and all the bells and the whistles. But I tell you what, you probably never broke bread with your people. And you probably never stood up on a Monday morning at 7 a.m. to give 2 hours worth of soft skills training to 30 people. That's what I do. And that sort of fidelity shines. And people see that. And so I am the real deal. And those that are looking for that behind the curtain, under the hood, who is this real owner of a company? May I align themselves with them? Yes. Those are the people that walk with me. And so it's not selective on my end, my friend. They have leverage. People can work anywhere. So you want to talk about inclusion. It's really about you choosing me, if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And you mentioned supervisors and managers that are underneath you.
Mhm.
Again, statistically, majority of managers or supervisors wouldn't hire someone who's neurodivergent because they feel they lack the awareness and the skill set.
Awesome.
So what steps and suggestions would you recommend to organizations and to those line managers?
I want to share you a great story. And my supervisor is going to, actually, my floor manager will love this. So let's go back about 12 years. I had an exceptionally large client that wanted to give psychological exams to all of my supervisors, colored psychological exams. So the next thing you know, before my morning coffee, I get this frantic phone call by saying, Richard, yes, you can't promote Fabian. Why can't I promote Fabian? Because he's high blue, high blue. What's high blue? High blue means he's not personable. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. He's the opposite of high red or something. What? Well, look at me 12 years later. This man is in charge of 150 people. He's been with me for 12 years. I can't tell you how many times we've broken bread with our families together. We laugh and cry together. So imagine if I had taken that advice and not promoted High Blue into his general manager position at my company, I wouldn't be where I am today. So to ask you about these exams and what I do, why don't we go on our intuition? Sure, people wear masks and a suit could be something, I don't know. But no, I want you to go on your tingles, your butterflies, your sixth sense, that sly smile somebody will give you. The fact that they do talk about topics that you like and you see the sincerity. You want to just start looking at statistics and resumes and people's rehearsed answers. Good luck. You're just going to get the same percentages as anybody else. But as unique as I am, this one rare flower in a desert, I look for the same. I was a dreamer, and I want people that like me. I want people to have that same grit and drive as me. I can teach you a CRM and how to make phone calls. Come on, Joseph, that's easy. But I can't teach somebody that lion's heart that they have, or being vulnerable, willing to take that chance, or someone that could be 3 times my size and could beat me up like Popeye, willing to let me not berate them in class, but rip them apart in regards to how they speak so they can improve oneself. And so I've seen people at their finest, and I've also been very disappointed in people that I expected things from. And I've had freshmen that are first day, first week that have stepped up to the plate. And so why don't you give everybody that same chance to impress you, not in that sort of structured, rigid way where you're checking off boxes. Why not the wild card? Not someone buying me coffee in the morning, but someone making a suggestion, showing that sort of initiative. Or as you were mentioning, being afraid to participate, well, that's your problem. If you're not breaking the law, why are you afraid of a cop? If you're not cheating on a test, why are you afraid of a teacher? Why would you be afraid of me? Don't you want to own a company one day? Don't you want some of your top generals making suggestions? And so pay it forward. Give them the opportunity and the openings to find that area to contribute. And when you do, don't just say everything's great. Let them know why you will or will not be taking those suggestions so they can learn from it. Those are the sort of things that have enabled me to build such a team of people that are so loyal. And so, yeah, High Blue. If you ever meet my floor manager, you have my permission to tease him. That has been his nickname for 12 years, Mr. High Blue. Yeah, right?
Well, I mean,
Come on, you got to tease him like Philly style.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, your candor is so fantastic and passionate, and again, very, very sound advice about how to judge your character and take the risks, and realize that it's your own faults in regards to not recognizing what's in front of you and giving them the opportunity so that you can get past your own faults.
My brother, why are people so hard on themselves? I mean, I understand where you're going with this. It's like Sisyphus with the rock up the hill, but and I got you. But my goodness gracious, why don't these people start with just making their own beds and physiologically having a good diet and rest and some exercise? Because until somebody can trunk their tree, there's no way to get branches and roots. How do you expect to expand to others if you do not have yourself balanced and centered? So a lot of it, my good friend, what you're talking about is self-development. These are self-private forced marches where Richard just can't be there to hit the ball and drag Joseph. It just doesn't work that way. I'll walk with you. I just can't drag you. And so, my good friend, a lot of this is just self-confidence and self-development. And these are things I can assist in finding it, but a lot of them need to uncover it inside themselves. It's that 10% demon of when they were rejected at the 8th grade dance, or they failed a test, or they missed the winning shot. I don't know. Put it to bed. Start over again. See if you can start new wins today. That would be my suggestion for people. Just do not be so hard on yourself. It was a different time, different place, and you grew.
I completely agree with what you're saying, and I completely agree with where you're coming from. And what I would say to that is that one, it takes time to develop that self-awareness.
Sure.
And two, it's great that you can assist. And I think that's what people are looking for. People are looking for your assistance, your coaching to help spot it out, to help elevate them, to once again give that recognition. But take into account, especially back in the early 80s or 90s, for example, I just recently read a particular article I'll share with you. But a lot of, depending on the circumstances that a person's been in, especially if they've been neurodivergent, they've been told constantly there's something wrong with them, that they're not fitting in, that they're not adapting or not or comparing to little Billy. And then that carries on with them into the education, that carries on with them to them within the workplace. So they have this decades of learned helplessness. And for example, many neurodivergents are undiagnosed. So for example, in the article that I just recently read, it's about this emotional trauma of having a late diagnosis and wishing that they had been diagnosed and known earlier so they would have a completed picture of who they are and how to better support themselves. So there's a lot of barriers, unfortunately, in front of people for them to be able to achieve that self-awareness and that motivation that I would love to have on a consistent basis and that you're trying to pull out of them.
We've all grown up. I mean, not to share all of my scars, but I was politely asked to leave after 7th grade at the private school I attended. Every kid has a tough year. I had a really bad year. My parents were getting divorced that year. I pretty much failed out of school. So if you want to look at me, I could have taken the easy way, gotten into more trouble, drugs, gone to jail, failed out of school. But I took the hard way. I took this scar of leaving one school and going to another. And from being a zero, I just got inducted into this other school's Hall of Fame for business. So imagine one school rejection and another one praise. So don't blame me. This is the environment where the sun was shining on me, where people were giving me reinforcement. So don't ever judge yourself on rigid school standards. You should judge yourself on your relationship with your family and your best friends and how much you love yourself. Because if I had judged myself starting at 12 years old as being a failure, I wouldn't be here today. So I take revenge and I beat that through success. I take someone's impression of me and I turn it around through example. And maybe by being in that position, it made me grow up a little bit, become more mature, be responsible for failing those classes. Yes, I didn't study that year. I failed. But then again, turned it around. I mean, yin and yang, my friends, sour and sweet. You need to have these lows in order to taste the highs. And so just enjoy your beautiful life. And I'm going to say it a second time. Don't be so hard on yourself. And the book smart people are not successful. And the ones that dropped out of school are millionaires. And so go figure. I don't know. It zigs and it zags. Why do some people date? Why do some people do certain things? Why are people attracted to one another? My greatest thing I did as a young man was I was extremely secure with my own tastes. And I loved my friends. And I loved my family. School was secondary. I just wasn't mature at the time. Today, I could crush it. Back then, I was chasing girls and playing sports and not paying attention. So why would I be hard on myself at 50, at 18? These are different men. And so you got to look at your own development. And if it has to be through putting your hand on the stove to see that it burns, well, I needed to learn that at 12 so I could take my education more seriously. And so these are self-developments. It's okay. Teachers give up on you. They don't try. Sometimes things are done through blocks or through drawing or through storytelling, through reading, through visuals. Hey, I'll give you an example. So I'm in college, right? And I need to do Shakespeare. It's boring. But if I watched the movie and read the Cliff Notes, I might pass that test. That was my way of learning it visually. Cliff noting it, I couldn't read that stuff. It went over my head. It wasn't there. I'm a visual learner. I'm a stimuli. I could back it up with the notes and ask questions. Why don't the teachers use a 360 approach? Which degree do you learn? What is it? That's why some of these geniuses go to these specialty schools where they choose how to learn. Is it on a green rug? Is it through blocks in a sand thing? Do they need to draw? Is it listening? For me, I'm a visual cat. And so that's how you could tap into richer. You put me in the other stuff, I'm failing. You give me visual, I'm an honor roll student. You go figure there. So don't give up on these students. And if you have a certain way, a medium of learning, then I would suggest it to the educators, to your parents, to your friends, that this is the best way for you to comprehend. So at least you can understand other people's points of view or reduce the amount of time for you to understand the topic. So I don't need a tutor. I can understand it in class now. I'm passionate because I failed when I was 12. I was labeled the bad kid. The mother's committee told me kids couldn't play with me. And that was tough, man, for a small school. So I said, we'll catch you next week. I went from 60 kids to 500 kids. And I made the best friends of my life. So I left. Joseph, I shed some skin. You see me today because at 12, I had my coming of age moment. and I was never going to go back to that again. I shed that skin and I was done with that. And if your audience, your beautiful audience, privately can make those sort of life-changing moments, I will be your biggest fan, your strongest supporter, and be the first one to congratulate you for living your new life, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And thank you for sharing your story. And there are a lot of relatable similarities, I think, from my personal side, and hopefully for my listeners that can relate to you. And you're 100% right in the aspect that it's the school system failing kids because they're not adapting to how they learn. And they're not passing that knowledge to the parents, because it's a linear approach, and it's that, and to a certain sense, it's not teachers' fault, it's the system's fault, because they are the product of the system, and it's the system that's unwilling to change. And hence why we're in this situation where a lot of neurodivergent talent are not being taught on what their strengths are, and they're more focused on their weaknesses, or why they're completely being missed and they're getting late diagnosis in their 30s and 40s, and having this struggle of trying to figure out of where they are. And yes, you have success stories, and on the other hand, you have the stories that haven't reached that success. So it's trying to find a balance and motivate them and have that self-awareness and develop that value proposition, as you have politely pointed out and motivationally have pointed out through your story and through our conversation.
Ah, Captain, my captain. I know we've all seen Dead Poet Society. Look what happened to that teacher at the end. He got thrown out. But look what he did to his students. They all stood on the desk, besides the ones that wouldn't, and they had their heads down. I love educators like that. Not everybody in the education system falls in lockstep. There are those that take chances. And those are the ones that inspired me to continue studying my second language. Those are the ones that wrote me college recommendation letters to offset my lower grades. And these are the people that gave me a beautiful life. So these educators may not think that they're making a difference, and they are. And the students that connect with the teachers, they're the ones that are giving them enough gasoline to continue, because a lot of them want to quit or they want to give up. And so I think it goes both ways. The educators need to give in and the students need to give back. And if we can do that, then maybe we can create these sort of amazing learning environments that you and I talked about today.
Not only just that, but it's taking that same principles and applying it into the workplace. Because what happens I would argue, what happens in the classroom is happening in the workplace. And it's putting those same principles that we've talked about, applying them into the workplace where employees can be who they are and focus on their strengths and get support for their challenges, and having managers and leaders be aware of that to create those environments so that talent can succeed.
They're going to need to want it. I mean, school, you're not getting paid for it. You're getting paid here, and there are expectations from the client and also expectations for yourself.
Absolutely.
It's maturity. I keep bringing that up. A lot of people come from comfortable families, or our average age is in the early 20s. So a lot of people are going to school while they're at the university, and they're going out and having fun. They should. They're young. I want that work-life balance, but I don't want you laggard the next day or drunk or hungover. That doesn't assist anybody. So I guess it's just about mastering this level, Joseph, that they can move on to next levels.
Absolutely. That's why, the questions I asked about inclusion and creating those environments and bringing that awareness to the workplace to create where human potential can succeed. So with that said, Richard, from your profile, you train individuals and provide consultations in telemarketing. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how people can get in touch with you?
Okay, great. They can buy a first-class plane ticket and come down and visit me, which would be great. The services we offer is sales, appointment setting, lead gen, customer support, and back office non-voice support. But I have an extremely large Facebook fan page, about 114,000 people. Joseph, it'll give your audience a real grasp on the business process outsourcing industry in Central America. Now, real quick, we're north of Panama, south of Nicaragua. We are the only democratic society in Central America. So there's no standing army. They put all that money back into education. We have a 95% literacy rate, the most neutral English accent in Central America, the best infrastructure. Companies such as Amazon, HP, Intel, and Oracle are here. We're known for medical and ecotourism. But it's a beautiful culture. They're very attuned to the North American market. We have these very advanced skill sets. And there's a lot of expats like myself that have moved here. And, it's a nice life. And so I can't thank you enough. I mean, this has been a great day. You pulled the best out of me. And I hope I was able to contribute with some really good gems that your audience can use. And if anyone ever just wants to reach out and touch base with me, I'd be more than happy to say hi, look at your script, put your credit card away. I'm not selling you anything. I'll be more than happy to give free advice because you're Joseph's buddy and my friend. And my man, I can't wait to do our second podcast when you come visit me here in Costa Rica.
Thank you for the invitation. And definitely you've given quite a lot of gems. And you are very honest and candid and really given a good motivation about how to move forward and be inclusive. Well, Richard, I want to thank you for being a gracious guest and for sharing your skills and tips on how to become a better communicator. Lastly, I want to thank you for sharing how business leaders can be more inclusive to neurodivergent talent. Dear listeners, I encourage you to check out the show notes to get in touch with Richard and reach out to him. And once again, Richard, thank you for being such a gracious guest.
Thanks, Joseph.
Hey, listeners, I encourage you to continue supporting this podcast so I can bring you more amazing content. You can do so by visiting my Patreon page, where you can connect with me more directly with several options. Till next time, take a leap and transform.